Yo, what's up, guys? It's Noah here breaking down the Monday Night Football Showdown slate for Week 14. We're going to take a look at this game between the Giants and the Eagles, run through this Showdown slate real quickly, just talk about all the viable plays, the guys that stand out to me the most. We'll hit on the top tier plays, the mid-range, and then we'll talk about any values I see as well. We'll look at the Vegas odds for this game. We'll hit on some snap counts from the last few weeks. There are a couple injuries we need to watch from the Eagles side that we will touch on as well. Before we do get started with the video, guys, as always, I would greatly appreciate it if you would drop a like down below. If you are new to the channel, make sure you click that subscribe button. I do upload these Showdown videos for every Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football game. Don't do the Sunday night game just because I'm usually not around my computer to make lineups for the Sunday night game, but for Monday Night Football Showdown and Thursday Night Football Showdown, I do have videos up on my channel every week. I also have exclusive content over on Patreon. So if you want to see some of the content I have to offer for this Showdown slate, I usually do a full written article where I break down the players I just like the most. I don't talk about every single player, just the guys that I'm really keyed in on that I like the most. So if you want to check out my Patreon, you can see all the content I have to offer over there. Get access to all the articles I provide, videos. I do make more videos over there, more in-depth videos. I have updated content as well, and I do have a Discord chat that you can join. So if you want to talk DFS with us throughout the day, I have a lot of people in there talking DFS throughout the day. So check out all the content I have to offer over on Patreon. Link is down in the description. Would definitely appreciate it. But let's just go ahead and take a look at this Showdown slate. We'll start off at the top. We'll hit on the two quarterbacks first, and then we'll go to running backs, and then just keep doing that. So starting off with the two quarterbacks, Carson Wentz and Eli Manning back under center for the Giants in this game. Daniel Jones is going to be out, which is going to thrust Eli Manning back into the starting quarterback spot. So we got Wentz at 11,800 against the Giants, obviously, and then we got Manning for 8,200. So obviously, like, Carson Wentz is the much higher projected play here. There is a big salary difference though between the two. I mean, you got Manning for $3,600 cheaper. Just in the few games that Eli started this season, at the beginning of the season, I mean, he wasn't terrible for fantasy. He wasn't great either. On the road against Dallas in Week 1, he had 18 Draftkings points in that game. And then Week 2 at home against Buffalo, he only had 12 DK points in that game. This is a really good matchup. I mean, the way you beat the Eagles is through the air. They have a really good run defense. They've been a pretty big pass funnel just all season. The way you beat them is through the air, so I could see going to Eli Manning on a Showdown slate. I mean, it is a Showdown slate, one game. You don't have a ton of options to choose from. I'm not going to fade Eli Manning just because he's like not that great of a quarterback. I mean, our options are so limited that I will definitely have exposure to him. If I'm only playing one lineup, I don't know if he makes it into my one lineup, but I do like him for $3,600 cheaper from Carson Wentz. I think it's going to be tough to pay up for Carson Wentz on this Showdown slate. I just prefer to go to like some of his pass catchers who I think have just as much upside, and they're almost $3,000 cheaper. Even Barkley in a tough matchup is $1,200 cheaper. So don't really see myself playing a ton of Carson Wentz tonight. If he goes for 30 DraftKings points and winds up being in the winning lineup, then so be it. But you're more likely to get like 15 to 20 DK points from Carson Wentz. I mean, he hasn't shown much of a ceiling this year. He only has a few games over 20 DK points. Week 1 against Washington, Week 3 against Detroit. He had over 20 DK points in Week 6, and then last week against the Dolphins had 28 DK points. This is obviously a spot where you could get a big game from Carson Wentz, but I'm more likely to save some salary and play some of the other guys that we'll talk about. So just looking at the quarterbacks in this game, I honestly prefer Eli Manning given that he's almost $4,000 cheaper. And those savings could be nice, but I mean, if you got the salary to pay up for Carson Wentz, he's a fine play. I just prefer some of the pass catchers and even the running backs in this game. So looking at the running backs, we do have Barkley. Tough matchup here against the Eagles, 10,600. The Eagles do have a pretty stout run defense. Tough spot, but it's a one-game Showdown slate. Our options are really limited. Barkley is firmly in play for me at 10-6, and honestly, I think he's probably the top projected play. Like, I'd project him higher than Carson Wentz here. Barkley's definitely like not been great for fantasy the last few weeks. Pretty much since his injury, he just hasn't been the same. He had that big game against Detroit where he kind of came on late. Since then, though, I mean, he's been under 15 or 16 DK points in like 4 straight weeks. You haven't gotten much of a like ceiling from Saquon Barkley this season. With Eli Manning under quarterback, I mean, for what it's worth, those 2 games at the beginning of the season when Eli was under QB, I don't know if this really matters, but 20 and 25 DK points in those games. or in those two games. I mean, they're probably likely to rely on Saquon here with Eli at QB. I think Saquon's firmly in play. I do prefer him over Carson Wentz for $1,200 cheaper, even in a tough matchup. I think you're more likely to get a ceiling game from Barkley than you are from Wentz, and I just like the raw upside that Saquon Barkley gives you with his ability to catch passes. Obviously, he's going to be their pretty much goal line back. He's going to do everything. So I do like Barkley. I think he's firmly in play on this showdown slate, one of the top spend-up options. And then you have Miles Sanders, who we definitely need to talk about. We got to talk about some of the injuries from the Eagles side. So I record these videos usually on Sunday afternoon, and then I'll upload them on Sunday night. So I'm recording this video around Sunday afternoon, about 4:30 Eastern time. We don't know the status of Jordan Howard, at least as of Sunday afternoon, but he did not practice all week. I don't think he's been cleared for contact still, so that's pretty likely that he does not play this game on Monday night since he hasn't been cleared for contact. And just the last few weeks with Jordan Howard out, we've seen Miles Sanders play a ton of snaps, just get a lot of volume. Just the last few weeks, just looking last week in Week 13 in that game against the Dolphins, you had Miles Sanders play 87% of the snaps. The week before that, 84%. The week before that, 85%. Even though they signed Jay Ajayi, they're just not using Jay Ajayi that much. So I definitely like Miles Sanders here. He should get most of the work, if not all the work. I mean, whenever Jay Ajayi's on the field, he's just out there to carry the ball. I don't even know how much Ajayi touched the ball last week. I don't think it was much at all. He only played like 15% of the snaps. He touched the ball twice in that game. So it's clear that Miles Sanders is their lead back as long as Jordan Howard remains out. And since Howard hasn't gotten cleared for contact yet, I imagine he's still going to be out for this game. So Miles Sanders, Saquon Barkley, both of the running backs I like a lot in this game. Barkley is $2,000 more expensive. If you've got the salary, I mean, Barkley's firmly in play. There are some values we'll talk about on this showdown slate, and I like going to some of these like mid-tier running backs and receivers as captain plays. You should be able to fit Barkley in your main build if you want to. But, I mean, I'm fine dropping down to Sanders. I have a lot of interest in both running backs just in general. Sanders in the much better matchup, $2,000 cheaper. So he'd probably be my preferred option if I can only choose one. Just kind of depends on how I'm constructing my lineup. But looking at the receivers now, we'll just start off on the Eagles side. So you got Alshon Jeffrey, 9,200 in a really good matchup. This Giants secondary has just been terrible this season. They've been getting killed through the air. They just have had a really struggling defense overall. Alshon Jeffrey is coming off a monster week last week against the Dolphins where he went for 9 catches, 137 yards and a touchdown. He got 16 targets in that game. Another Eagles injury we need to watch heading into Monday night is the status of Nelson Agholor. So Nelson Agholor did play last week against the Dolphins. He played a pretty large amount of snaps, his normal workload. We can pull up the snap percentage from last week just so you guys can see. So last week in that game against the Dolphins, Agholor played 89% of the snaps, which is, his normal workload. If he is out this week, that's going to thrust guys like Greg Ward, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside into a much higher role. I mean, in Week 12, when both Jeffrey and Agholor were out, you had Arcega-Whiteside play 71% of the snaps. You had Greg Ward played 49%. And then you also had Jordan Matthews play 96% as well. But Jordan Matthews didn't even touch the field last week. I'm not sure if he's hurt or if he was just like a healthy scratch. Probably something I could check real quick. Yeah, I guess he's just a healthy scratch, like not even on the team. I don't even know. But obviously they're not using Jordan Matthews. So if Nelson Agholor is out, that's going to thrust guys like Greg Ward and Arcega-Whiteside into much bigger roles. And they are really cheap on this showdown slate. We definitely need to talk about them. You got Arcega-Whiteside for $2K, and then you have Greg Ward at the minimum $200. Both of these guys would be firmly in play for me as value receivers, especially Greg Ward because he's $200. If he's going to play even 50 to 55% of the snaps, I mean, the week that both Agholor and Jeffrey were out, he did get targeted 7 times. I believe that was the Week 12 game against Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. And that was a game where Ward got targeted 7 times. Last week against the Dolphins, only 3 targets. But that was obviously with Agholor healthy. Now, if Agholor is out, you expect Ward to play more and probably see more volume. And he's minimum salary $200. Like, just plugging him into your lineup is just going to let you pay up for whoever you want. So I'll for sure be keeping my eye on the status of Nelson Agholor because I think that will definitely open up some value from these Eagles receivers. Obviously, though, if Agholor is out, I mean, the guy that you can project to see the most volume, the 2 guys you can project to see the most volume are Jeffrey and Ertz. And both of them are firmly in play on this showdown slate. If I have to choose one, I do prefer Alshon Jeffrey, 9,200. Alshon Jeffrey, I think, is one of the top overall plays just in general. And then looking at some of the Giants receivers, You got Golden Tate, 8K. You got Sterling Shepard, 7,200. I like both of these guys as well. I mean, the way you beat the Eagles, I said at the beginning of the video, is through the air. They've had a really struggling secondary just all season. Golden Tate, just a guy that's seeing 6 to 8 targets pretty much every week, even with Sterling Shepard healthy, still getting 6 to 8 targets. With Eli Manning back under center, I guess you could consider that a slight downgrade for the passing game. But honestly, with how poor Daniel Jones has played some this season, I don't think it's that big of a downgrade. I like Tate. I do like Shepard a lot. Choosing between the two, I think I prefer Golden Tate. He's going to line up in the slot. Sterling Shepard will be back outside now that Tate's healthy. Tate didn't play last week. Shepard was in the slot primarily. I did play him a lot in that or in last week's main slate against Green Bay. He had 3 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. It's a solid game from him. He's firmly in play as well, but I do prefer Golden Tate. I think like my favorite pass catchers in this game are definitely Jeffrey and Tate, and then potentially some of the value that we have from the Eagles side. And I do want to talk about the tight ends as well. So Evan Ingram's going to be out. Rhett Ellison's going to be out as well, which is going to put Caden Smith back in the starting tight end spot for the Giants. He's gotten 6 and 8 targets the last 2 weeks as a starting tight end. I expect Eli Manning to target him a ton. I mean, Eli Manning's always targeted Evan Ingram and just always targeted the tight end whenever he's been under center. 2,200, he's another really good value, and there are a lot of viable cheap plays, like potentially these Eagles receivers we could look to. Caden Smith is really cheap. So you can definitely pay up for the studs at the top on this Showdown slate. Like, I think it was last Thursday night, we had that game between the Cowboys and the Bears. There wasn't much value I really liked in that game, so I had to play like a lot of the kickers. Usually I prefer not to play the kickers or the defenses because rarely are they in the winning lineup. But at least the kickers have been in the winning lineup some this season. But like defenses, it's so hard to predict if a defense is going to put up like a defensive touchdown or something. I mean, I guess it's possible with the Eagles playing at home here against Eli Manning. There's always a chance for upside there with how poorly Eli's just played throughout the past few years. But still, I like going to some of these cheap pass catchers that should see probably 4 to 6 targets. Smith, potentially Arcega-Whiteside, and especially Greg Ward, $200. I will for sure have my eye on. So I think we pretty much covered like all the pass catchers. Darius Slayton, I'm definitely down on now that Shepard and Tate are both healthy. He's still going to play a ton. He should see some targets. I do prefer to go to Tate and Shepard though, just for a little bit more salary. But it's not like Darius Slayton's just going to like not play at all. I mean, he's still going to line up outside a ton. In 3 wide receiver sets, they're going to have Tate in the slot, and then they'll have Shepard and Slayton outside. So Slayton's still going to be on the field a ton. I just slightly prefer Shepard and Tate over him for a little bit more salary. So I think we pretty much covered everything. You got Dallas Goedert as well, who continues to see solid volume. He's 4,800. I mean, he's gotten at least 6 targets 3 straight weeks. If Nelson Aguilar's out, they're probably going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, and we'll see Dallas Goedert continue to get plenty of volume. 4,800 firmly in play as well as another cheap pass catcher. Definitely a lot of viable cheap pass catchers on this Showdown slate. So I think we pretty much covered like the whole player pool, just the guys I have the most interest in. Let's definitely talk about a couple roster builds real quick just before we end the video. So looking at captain plays, I think there are plenty of viable captain plays at the top. I would say my 2 favorite, probably Alshon Jeffrey and Golden Tate. I really like those 2 guys a lot in this spot. I definitely like Alshon Jeffrey at 13.8. I think there's a lot of upside for him here in this matchup. I mean, even if he lines up against Janoris Jenkins, like Janoris Jenkins has been so bad this season. The Giants secondary just overall has been atrocious. So definitely want to target Alshon Jeffrey. And if I'm playing a pass catcher at the captain spot, I always want to correlate my lineups and play the quarterback with him. So if I'm playing Jeffrey at captain, I will definitely have Carson Wentz in those lineups. Assuming Nelson Aguilar is out, I think you can definitely look to guys like Arcega-Whiteside and Greg Ward. And if Aguilar's out, I will for sure have a lot of exposure to Greg Ward for only $200. That's going to just free you up so much salary. You can now probably play both quarterbacks if you want to go that route. You could play Eli Manning at 8,200. You could get one of his pass catchers, whether you want to go with Tate or Shepard. Slightly prefer Tate, but I think both are fine. Just plugging in Tate there at 8K leaves you 8K remaining for your last spot, so you could play Shepard, Slayton. You could go to one of those guys. You could upgrade from Tate to Sanders, and then that leaves you 7,400, which is enough to play Sterling Shepard. So that's another way you could go. That's a lineup build I like a ton. Going to Greg Ward as a value just frees you up so much, and there's definitely upside for Greg Ward here, especially if Aguilar's out. He should probably play, I'd say, at least 55 to 60% of the snaps. I mean, Arcega-Whiteside's probably going to line up outside a lot, and they're going to use him a lot. But still, I think Ward just gives you more upside. I think he's the more talented receiver, and he's also minimum the $200. I mean, Arcega-Whiteside's $1,800 more. Both probably would project very similarly, so I'll just take the guy that's way cheaper. So I'll for sure be keeping my eye on the status of Nelson Aguilar because I think that's actually a really big injury to watch heading into Monday night. Obviously, we need to watch the status of Jordan Howard. If he's out, we know that Miles Sanders is going to be the guy that benefits there. So I think we pretty much covered everything for the Showdown slate. Didn't talk about the total, forgot to talk about that, but right now this game does have a 44.5 total. It has dropped quite a bit. It opened at 47. It's down to 44.5. There is expected to be some weather concerns in this game. Like, there's expected to be rain and wind at game time, which is obviously going to affect the passing game. On a one-game Showdown slate, I mean, you can't really fade the passing game. Because you don't have enough options to choose from. It's not like you can just play all the running backs. I'll just keep playing the pass catchers. I mean, it's not like I'm going to get away from the pass catchers, even with some rain and wind. Weather is usually overrated anyway. People like overrate weather. It's really not that crazy. I mean, we've seen guys put up big games in wind, or if it's a rainy game, guys can still put up big games. So I'll still be just playing the Showdown slate as normal, even though there are some weather concerns in this game, I guess. But yeah, 44.5 total, I guess that's a big concerning. The total has dropped a little bit. Eagles are still big favorites, 9.5. They opened as 8.5 favorites. They're up to 9.5. But I think we pretty much covered everything for this Showdown slate, guys. Like I said at the beginning, if you want to check out my full written article that I have for this Showdown slate, it will most likely go up probably Sunday night. If it's not up Sunday night, I'll for sure have it up Monday morning. I'll also have a ton of content for NBA this week. I do post NBA content Monday through Friday over on Patreon. I do have NFL content as well. I put up NFL content throughout the week, mainly. A lot of it goes up on the weekends, on Saturday and Sundays. Just check out everything I have to offer over on Patreon. Get in the Discord chat so you can chat DFS with us. You can see all the packages I have available over there. I do have bundles, so if you like to play NBA and NFL, you can get both sports for a cheaper price than what you would normally pay. So check out my Patreon. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new. Click that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is down in the description at DFS by Noah. Patreon is also patreon.com/DFS by Noah. But good luck Monday night. Thank you for watching, guys. See you in the next video. Peace.